Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, your home for news from a conscious perspective that looks at political corruption, corporate corruption, everything from spiritual empowerment to healthy eating, and interviewing important guests that you hopefully want to know more about. So I advise you, I recommend, I humbly request you to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com to get all of our latest content. Follow us on Minds, follow us on Steemit, join our Discord channel, sign up for our text list, especially you guys. If you've been here for a long time and you haven't signed up for our text lists, what are you waiting for? You can also follow us on BitChute, and if you want to support financially, you can do that on Patreon or Subscribestar. You can also go through My Brave Botanicals and get you a free ounce of kratom and some CBD. And by the way, I just want to say a quick note. We've actually got emails from people saying that this kratom here that they got helped them quit heroin and other hard opiates. So, that's awesome. And it's helping support me, and you can help people's medicine. Finally, get our email newsletter by signing up right here. All right, so today we're going to talk about one of these sort of perennial issues and topics, child abuse. And I just happened to come across this story here. Let me show you. It was called Unholy Alliance from the Courthouse News Service. Anybody who's ever just, if you're starting out your research and just trying to get started on things, I recommend Courthouse News Service and similar services because occasionally they have articles, but sometimes they just have short descriptions like this, and it needs the work of a journalist or a researcher, investigator to go find out more. So, as I said, it's called Unholy Alliance, Seattle. A minor, which is a child under the age of 18, claims that Sequel Youth and Family Services of Washington State and profit-seeking Clarinda Academy Youth Corps of Clarinda, Iowa, have a, quote, unholy partnership in which the co-defendant Washington State turns a blind eye to, quote, consistent and alarming reports of abuse and neglect occurring at Clarinda Academy after it receives foster children from Washington. So I read this, it's like a long run-on sentence, and that's all it is. And then they have this link where it says Unholy Partnership that opens up the court documents. And this is where it gets a little bit more disturbing. Because as you can see here, it says, the co-defendant Washington turns a blind eye. So the state of Washington, which through Sequel Youth and Family Services is working with Clarinda Academy Youth Corps in Iowa, and Washington State is apparently turning a blind eye to reports of abuse and neglect occurring in Iowa. So it seems like the Washington State is sending foster kids, to this Clarinda Academy in Iowa, and kids are reporting all kinds of nasty, disturbing things, and they're being ignored. So the individual suing is known in court just as MDJ, which is the minor that is bringing this complaint forward. And let's get some of the details. State of Washington, the Department of Children, Youth and Families, and the Department of Social and Health Services are departments of the state of Washington. The Department of Children, Youth, and Families is a new department that began serving as Washington's Child Welfare Agency in July 2018. So this new bureaucracy is already having issues. Prior to July 2018, the Child Welfare Agency was operated under the Department of Social and Health Services. Both of them have a job to protect children from harm. And in addition, the defendant Sequel Youth and Family Services is a foreign for-profit corporation that owns and operates programs in residential centers around the country, including juvenile detention centers. Defendant Sequel Youth and Family Services does business in Washington State, including contracting with Washington and sending its employees and agents to Washington State for the purposes of facilitating placement and transfer of Washington foster youth from Washington State to the Clarinda Academy in Iowa. Clarinda Youth Corporation, aka Clarinda Academy, is a for-profit corporation owned by Sequel, which carries out daily operations at the Clarinda Academy. So these three organizations work out together. Clarinda Academy holds itself out as a group foster home for children as a behavior rehabilitation services. Defendant Clarinda Youth Corporation does business in Washington State, including contracting with defendant state and sending its employees and agents to Washington for the purpose of facilitating placement and transfer of Washington foster youth from Washington to Iowa. And MDJ is a minor and a resident and citizen of Washington State who was neglected, abused, and harmed as the result of the negligence of all three of these organizations, namely the Washington State departments that are supposed to look after kids, Sequel Youth and Family Services, and Clarinda Youth Corporation that runs Clarinda Academy. So let's get in a little further to it. It says, in April 2017, employees of the defendants herein met at SeaTac Airport for purposes of forcing MDJ, a minor child, to board a plane and travel 1,700 miles. Excuse me, guys. Travel 1,700 miles from his home to a physically and sexually abusive prison, holding itself as a behavior rehabilitation home for children, Clarinda Academy, which is located in Clarinda, Iowa. Clarinda Academy is a prison-like environment where children are abused and deprived of essential liberties and dignities. It is owned and operated by defendants Sequel and Clarinda, herein collectively known as the Clarinda Defendants. Defendant State formed an unholy partnership with the for-profit Clarinda Defendants, wherein the state shipped foster children off to Iowa. So again, that's where the unholy partnership comes from. So it's saying Washington formed an unholy partnership with for-profit Clarinda Corporation, wherein the state shipped foster children off to Iowa and then turned a blind eye and a deaf ear to the consistent and alarming reports of abuse and neglect occurring at Clarinda Academy. 4 years before defendants contracted to send MDJ to the Clarinda Academy, Washington had been quietly sending Washington's foster children to out-of-state institutions for residential care. Approximately 75% of the state's contracts for out-of-state placement of foster children were with Sequel's institutions, including Clarinda Academy in Iowa. So we need to look more and more into this organization. It says, defendant state, which is Washington, knew at a bare minimum that Clarinda Academy has been the subject of several serious criminal allegations, including assaults and fights, as well as allegations of forced sodomy and rape. Nevertheless, Washington continued to send foster children to Clarinda Academy. Washington received numerous complaints from foster children about the prison-like conditions and treatment at Clarinda Academy, including reports that staff were abusive, the facility was operated like a prison, and that children desperately wanted to return to Washington. Notwithstanding these complaints and allegations, the state persisted in sending foster children to Clarinda Academy. To make matters worse, the state never bothered to send social workers or otherwise investigate these complaints. And in April 2017, MDJ became the next in a long line of vulnerable Washington foster youth to be victimized at Clarinda Academy. Employees and agents of Clarinda traveled to SeaTac Airport, where they met an employee of Washington and assumed custody of MDJ. Defendants then flew him over 1,700 miles from Seattle to Clarinda. Arriving at the academy, MDJ noticed it was right next to a prison. Clarinda Academy welcomed MDJ by introducing him to its draconian set of severe restrictions, rules, and equally severe system of corporal punishment. Over the next 15 months, MDJ was subjected to countless incidents of unimaginable abuse and neglect under the auspices of a foster care placement. By way of illustration, MDJ and other Clarinda Academy students were forced to adhere to a strict and complex behavioral code that included a prohibition against speaking with students of the opposite gender, possessing a cell phone, or calling family and friends. A student's violation of any one of these rules would result in immediate and harsh punishment, oftentimes resulting in physical abuse under the guise of restraint. Physical restraints are strictly prohibited under Washington law and are an unacceptable form of punishment for children. Yet on a nearly daily basis, Clarinda defendants violated Washington's law against corporal punishment for foster children. Official Clarinda Academy documents show that the institution even unabashedly reports its use of physical restraints as a form of punishment to the state of Washington. So they didn't even try to hide it. Clarinda Academy would force MDJ into a physical restraint by placing his hands behind his back and forcing his head between his legs and his chest on his thighs. Clarinda's staff would then sit on his back, pressing down to exert pressure and pain. This would last for extended periods of time. What the fuck is wrong with these people? MDJ's back was injured and re-injured by this daily abuse, and the effect of those injuries continues to the day. MDJ reported the abuse to his assigned social workers back in Washington state. They turned a deaf ear to his reports. The social workers told him to stop exaggerating. However, he was undeterred, making reports often twice a week. Still, Washington forced him to remain in the abusive environment, and despite his reports and the reports of other students, no social worker ever bothered to conduct an on-site visit to the academy or investigate the reports of abuse. Thus, the defendant state was on direct notice of these unlawful and abusive practices, yet continued to do nothing for MDJ or the other foster children. MDJ was thereby robbed of basic human dignity and victim of countless indecencies, ranging from not being allowed to leave the restrictive campus to constant fear of sexual assault. To make matters worse, Clarinda Academy authoritarian power structure combined with grossly inadequate supervision created and perpetuated an environment where a certain class of students were allowed to commit heinous crimes against other students, including physical and sexual assault. These students would beat MDJ up in his room with impunity on a consistent basis. The Clarinda Academy allowed and perpetuated a hostile environment where MDJ was in constant fear of physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, and robbed of basic dignities and liberties. As a result of the defendant's financial alliance and concerted negligence, MDJ and scores of other vulnerable foster children were directly harmed. So yeah, and this gets a little bit more into the kind of the legal details, but that's essentially the story that the minor here, known as MDJ, is telling. There's more. I will post both these links in the in the description below. What he's asking for: plaintiffs request a judgment against Sequel Youth and Family Services, Clarinda Academy Youth Corporation, and State of Washington, awarding general and special damages in an amount to be proven at trial, awarding reasonable attorney fees and costs, awarding any and all applicable interest on the judgment, declaring defendants jointly and severely liable, and awarding such other and further relief as the court deems just and proper. This was filed just the other day. And I'm going to try to find out more from these attorneys and see if we can find out more about this and keep my eye on it. But like I said, found this on Courthouse News, just one little link. And you're not hearing about this anywhere on the media from what I can see. Maybe local media, but I haven't seen anything. But for those who want to help me out with this, because I am extremely busy right now, please help me look into Sequel Youth and Family Services that are based in Washington State. It said they are foreign owned. Who owns them? Clarinda Academy of Youth Corp, also known as Clarinda Corporation. You can find the names in this document here. Help me find out more about these companies and email me at derrick@theconsciousresistance.com, and let's see if we can do a little bit of work, because even if we can just help one of these kids or more of them who are stuffed in these systems, then that's a good thing, because unfortunately the state has control of the children. There's medical kidnapping, and if you don't vaccinate them, if you don't raise them in the way they say, or you don't have the right religion, they will come and take your kids away. And kids who are born in shitty situations without parents, they get sucked into this foster system and they become victimized like this, and it happens over and over and over again. So please help me do something. Spread the word. Help me do research. There's got to be some way we can help. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. Please share, like, follow, subscribe. And I hope you do something good today to help someone else out, because the world's a crazy, fucked up place. And sometimes I feel like I'm losing hope. But talking with you guys and working with you guys lets me know that there is some hope, even if it's hard to find on some days. Well, until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.